If you are here, you have taken an active role in bettering your life, no matter what stage of life you are in. The Banyan Treatment Center's podcast will discuss many topics like recovery, addiction, self-help, mental health, and so much more. It will provide you with tools to succeed, ideas for recovering, and how-tos on creating a better life. My name is Alyssa, and today's episode is about mastering long-term recovery. Today on our panel, we have Blake Cohen, published author, substance use disorder professional, personal growth and recovery coach, and co-founder of Next Level Recovery Associates. Next Level Recovery Associates offers recovery and family coaching, digital addiction services, intervention assistance, and more. Thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. A broad question. And thank you for allowing me to be here, first of all. Yeah, no, I've worked in the field now for a little while, helping people and families specifically overcome issues pertaining to addiction. Mm-hmm. To me, my passion started like way back with psychology and understanding how the mind plays a role in everything that we do and on our behaviors, and then fell into my own addiction. So when I found recovery, I really decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to helping others overcome this disease. And a main focus of that for this whole time, and this really how I was trained and taught, was to focus on the whole family system. So yeah. We do a lot of work at Next Level, working with families. We offer complex case management, sober companions, transports. I mean, really any service that we feel like the family might need to help guide them through this super complicated process of getting a loved one healthy and getting themselves healthy.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. We've actually interviewed a couple of people that work for Next Level Recovery Associates, so it only made sense to have one of the co-founders here. Studies show that addiction affects over 20 million Americans ages 12 and over. If you are someone that has or currently is struggling with an addiction, then you know the thought of long-term recovery can seem impossible. We're here to tell you that it is possible. Once you've successfully overcome physical and psychological symptoms associated with addiction, keeping a consistent recovery plan can be achievable. Maintaining long-term recovery requires constant vigilance and actionable steps that continue throughout the rest of your life. If you want to succeed at maintaining long-term recovery, listen in as we discuss some effective habits you can utilize for years to come. So Blake, how long have you been in recovery for?
I have been sober since New Year's Eve of 2012. So it was 10 years this past New Year's Eve.
Wow, congratulations, a decade.
Thank you.
So was there anything that caused you to seek treatment, rock bottom?
Yeah, and I think that is really what led me to want to focus on family. It was the role my family played in helping me get sober. It was actually an intervention. So they showed up at my door at 8 a.m. on New Year's Eve of 2012, and they showed up in a way that, for the first time, I realized that I was affecting somebody else besides me. And that's really when I let my guard down and said, okay, I'll do whatever it takes at this point. Of course, there were some steps in between, and I was being a little bit of a jackass in between that as well, but that was the point where I had like this realization that this isn't all about me. There's other people involved in this process, and I'm really hurting them. They're not just pretending I'm hurting them by destroying myself. I'm actually hurting them, and they don't know what to do. So I better get my crap together so that I can stop doing the damage I'm doing.
No, and I love that you bring that up, because what you do for work now is, interventions and family intervention and helping people. So it's good to know that you're a product of the service that you offer, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think a lot of families have this belief that you can't get somebody sober. They have to be ready to do it. And the truth is like an intervention and family showing love in a certain way, whether it's tough love or whether it's just overwhelming love, that can be what makes a person ready to want to change. So
makes them ready to change and also maintain long-term recovery because they're supporting them.
It could start the process and support the process all the way through.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that you found after receiving treatment, to be able to achieve long-term recovery?
I feel like a broken record here, but I think it was also family because there was so much damage that was done.
Yeah.
I think there's a common misconception of people getting out of treatment. And I feel like we were just talking about this, and now I'm realizing this was my story. we're talking about it with somebody else, in case anybody's listening, to all you listeners out there. But I realized when I got out that just because I went to treatment doesn't mean that I fixed everything with everybody. And I didn't realize how much I'm going to have to earn trust back. So like the first year and a half for most of my family was a lot of questioning me, a lot of mistrust, a lot of behaviors like gripping their purses when I'm around. It took my mom 3 years really to realize that I was taking this process seriously. So I think for me, that was the biggest challenge. I didn't realize the level of inadvertent judgment that I was going to have to deal with when I got out, and the level of work that I was going to have to do on myself in order to prove to myself and to others that I was taking this seriously and I was really trying to change.
I really love that you bring that up because it really helps paint a picture for someone in early recovery. Like these are challenges you are going to face. When we're in active addiction, we're so selfish in what we're doing. We truly can't comprehend the full effect that we're having on other people. We think we know, but we really don't know.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, I'm finally doing the thing that they asked me for. I went to treatment, I got sober. And it's like, oh, you don't magically trust me again? Like, I'm sober now. You know, like, no, you have to earn that. And you did a really good job of losing that trust years before. So,
yeah, seriously. And I think the expectation from people who are in treatment, it's not like it's not warranted. I mean, if you're in treatment and you're taking it seriously, you're working really hard.
yeah.
So like you want that recognition from family who was so devastated that you've just busted your butt for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, however long you needed to be in care. But the truth is like you were in a bubble in treatment and you may have worked hard setting a foundation, but there's still so much living left to do and so much more trust that has to be earned back.
Yeah. And what about like changes to make to your lifestyle in early recovery, right? I mean, people talk about them all the time, the suggestions, but
Yeah, I think people there's a saying that everybody says the only thing you're going to have to change is everything. And I think that's true for some people. I think the truth is for me and my experience with this is that there was a certain level of having to take care of myself and healthy habits I had to add to my routine. It wasn't like my whole life was revolving around substances at this point. Maybe when I went to treatment, it was sort of, but in secret.
Yeah.
So it's not like all my friends were all using with me, my family. There was nothing like that. It was really more me keeping this big secret. So obviously I had to remove those people from my life. But what I had to do was add a bunch of healthy habits to my life, like exercise. I had to add meetings on a regular basis for myself. I had to be willing to go see a therapist and take suggestions and join an IOP group for a full year. I had to talk to people on a regular basis who were in programs or who were in recovery and be honest. Even getting in the habit of being honest was like a new thing for me, where I had to be my authentic self and figure out who I was and continue to put that work in. So it wasn't so much changing the way my life was, but it was adding a bunch of really healthy things to it to make sure that I could maintain the sobriety long term.
how does your business Next Level Recovery Associates support people during that phase of early recovery?
That's a great question. And we actually love this part because we get to get creative. So when people come out of treatment and they don't know what to do with themselves, the typical treatment center, and to no fault of their own, it's only so much they can do, will give somebody a discharge plan that's sort of like, go see a psychiatrist, go to IOP, go to this many meetings in this many days.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a broad idea, a broad stroke of what you should do, but actually implementing that stuff and then getting your life back on track and having someone to support you through that process and say, like, here's what you should do, here's where you should go, here's why they're recommending you to do this. Having that guidance from somebody who's a trusted professional who can walk you and hold your hand through those early days makes it so much easier and more likely you're going to follow through on those discharge plans. The other piece, though, for us and where I get excited and we get to be creative is I think we had a realization that substance use disorders and recovery from them is not about stopping the usage. It's about finding what makes you happy and fulfilled and passionate in life And so where we get to come in is really help design with you and explore everything that life has to offer and throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks that's going to make you feel fulfilled and happy and passionate. So we get to go on this journey with you of finding what it is that like lights that spark inside of you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you get sober and you realize you have a lot of extra time on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not using, you're trying to figure out how to get drugs or, you're sick. So you have all this free time. It's super important to keep yourself busy so your mind doesn't wander.
For sure. And, it's about keeping yourself busy. But at the same time, and I think anybody who's in recovery or had an addiction issue can relate that you sort of feel like you don't have a sense of purpose.
Yes.
Like you lose everything in your life and your whole life becomes around using substances or lying or hurting people or whatever it may be, and you feel useless. So why would you want to live that same way in the absence of drugs? So unless we can build a positive life for you and figure out what it is that's going to make you have that sense of purpose, I wouldn't see a reason why you would want to maintain your sobriety.
Yeah. Do you have some examples of some of the things that you'll cultivate for people?
Yeah. There's a few that come to mind. There's one, a guy who wanted to learn how to cook and become a chef, but he was sort of embarrassed. It comes from a wealthier family. It's like, that's kind of a hard life to live. It's not like the TV celebrity chefs, it's like you're working pretty hard hours and long and you got to start from the bottom. But it made him feel good. So we brought in somebody who could teach him how to cook some basic meals. We gave him a chance to feel what it's like to cook a meal for somebody. So we actually stood there with him and this cooking teacher and cooked a meal for his whole family. And they had the family provide feedback on the meal, and they loved the food that he made for them. So it was like this very positive moment where he got his family's validation. At the same time, he got to see what it really feels like to watch someone smile while they're taking a bite of the food you just made for them. Yeah, it was so cool.
That's so exciting. It's such like a heartfelt, warming opportunity for him. I'm sure he had an amazing time and experience doing that.
And it's that example, like you can feel that sense of happiness and joy without drugs in your life, without substances in your life. You can have that pleasure back in your life. And it doesn't have to come from stuff that's going to bring us down.
Yeah. I know there is a saying that, you get sober and basically everything you do is like a totally new experience with sober eyes. And it could be as simple as cooking a meal and getting some validation for it. But you're really, truly experiencing how to do something sober and feel good about it. Yeah. You can be proud of yourself for the smallest things. And it's like you did it, you achieved it, and you did it without using drugs and alcohol, which is pretty amazing feat.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about relapse, because obviously that does happen from time to time. Would you consider relapsing a normal part of the recovery process?
That's always a tough question, right? Yeah. Like,
I'm here to debunk it, by the way. So
okay. So
do whatever.
So you don't think it is?
I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
Especially if you have the right support. I personally don't think it has to be. I do think a lot of people, unfortunately, have to bump their heads a few times in order to figure out what doesn't work for them. But
so why do you think that people say that relapse is part of the process?
Just because of the statistics of what they see, I think, So is it like an attempt to make people feel better if they do relapse, you think? It's like, so if we call it normal, then it's okay. You can right, it makes them feel better about it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me. I think that I understand where that's coming from. I don't think it can be looked at in the total opposite way, too, that if you tell me relapse is part of the process, you're also giving me an out.
Yes.
So I think it could be looked at both ways. I don't think it has to be. I think when you're ready, you're ready. And when you're ready to put the work in and your life is so good that you don't want to lose it, then you're not going to relapse. If you're expecting somebody else to do the work for you and to change everything for you, and you're not really willing to put in any effort into your recovery, especially early on, I think then you could probably expect it.
Yeah. No, I love that. Whenever people usually ask me about that, I kind of say to them, like, it's okay if it happens if you learn something from it and you get up and, you keep on moving. You don't want to do that because at the end of the day, you're never guaranteed that you're going to come back from a relapse. So don't leave that as an option on the table. I mean, we're talking about a life or death situation most of the time.
Yeah, especially now. Don't you feel like when we were kids, like everybody used to say like, oh, you don't smoke that because you never know what's in it. And like now it's like,
No, seriously.
it's legitimate now. Yeah, like no, seriously, don't do that because we really have no idea. It is truly life and death at this point. And I know people, I mean, I'm sure you do too. We all know people who've just tried to go back one more time and
Yes.
you didn't see it coming.
Nope.
And they just picked up that one time and it was mixed with something or they used too much or whatever it was and we lost them. So I don't think when I got in this industry that I was prepared for the level of death that I would have to experience.
Yeah.
And how almost normal it becomes and how numb we kind of become to it after a while, which is sad.
It is sad because then it's like you lose somebody that you're like, I should be grieving this more, and you're just so accustomed to it.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah, and it's almost talked about in a way of, you know, that's what has to happen. People have to die to keep us sober. You know, we have to recognize that we don't want to go back out there, and we see that happening, and it motivates us to stay in recovery, which there's some truth to. And it makes me feel like at least their death isn't in vain. Mm-hmm. It's going to motivate other people towards staying in recovery or finding recovery. But it's sad that we sometimes don't feel it the way that we should because we've become so used to it.
Yeah. And especially because you and I both know, as somebody who has struggled and been through it and now has a decade plus clean and sober, that it is possible to get through it, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, my worst day sober doesn't even come close to a day getting high.
Yeah.
There's nothing that would take me there again, you know? So it's like, it's hard to understand why they would keep making the same decisions over and over again, because it's like, you can have this beautiful life.
Yeah.
It really is possible. It might seem unattainable, but trust me, when I was homeless, it seemed unattainable. And I have a beautiful life today.
Yeah.
And it all started with one simple thing.
What's that?
Not picking up.
Yeah.
Not using drugs, you know, taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a beautiful way to put it. I think the hard part is that we're dealing with that feeling like it's never going to get better for so long.
yeah.
And that's really where it comes into. Like this, I could say for me, this was the first thing in my life that I ever committed to long term and worked hard for on a daily basis.
Yeah.
For enough days where I actually started to see results. And recovery in that sense worked as an example for me in everything else in my life. I finally, for the first time, saw the payoff that comes after doing hard work consistently.
Yeah.
It changed my world and my view on everything.
Yeah.
Because I realized there is such a greater rewarding feeling you get when you work hard for something over months, years. The feeling that you have of achieving a certain level of success by putting in that effort, there's no greater feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you said 3 years for your mother to really trust you again, you know? We're talking about years sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people don't ever come back to you. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know? You keep doing what you need to do for yourself and know that you're living a better life every day, and you hope and pray for that person that, you know, they'll see the changes that you've made. But usually by that point, other people have seen the changes. You have enough self-worth. You're proud of yourself as far as you've come, so.
Yeah. And as far as you come is an important piece there. Like it never stops.
Never.
It gets easier and has ups and downs for sure. In the beginning, you said something about mastered recovery. And like, I think the way you get to 10 years is you realize you've never mastered recovery.
Yeah.
And that you're a constant work in progress and you never got this.
Yeah.
Like you have to constantly keep showing up. I still show up to my meetings. I still talk to my people, still do my thing. And it's become part of my routine in my daily life now, and I love it.
Yeah. It's like, you know, you sign up for a maintenance plan every year. Like, how am I going to maintain this recovery for this year, you know, and reevaluate. Maybe what worked for you last year isn't what's going to work for you this year. Do you have some goals you want to set? What do you want to do with yourself? You know, at this point, obviously, I have 11 years sober. The obsession of using drugs and alcohol has left me a long time ago, but that doesn't mean that I don't stop growing, you know, same as you.
Right.
So what are we doing to grow as a person? How are we going to be a better person tomorrow, regardless of drugs and alcohol?
Right,
that is the goal, just to be a better person.
Yeah, it becomes like this thing where it's really hard for a little while, maybe a few months, maybe a year or two, and then it becomes like this gift that you've been given of like, okay, I get to work on myself continually, forever, possibly. I get to keep getting better. I get to keep striving for new goals. I get to keep achieving successes. Like, it's really cool after a while, and it sort of like turns your issue into like this huge gift that you've been given, where you get to now be like self-reflective enough to constantly work on yourself.
So what do you think are some of the most successful aftercare plan strategies for somebody in early recovery? Like, how do we get them to strive to having the success?
So the answer to that question is sort of loaded, because it's different for everybody. I think finding what motivates each person and kind of giving them little glimmers of hope along the way that show them that things will get better if they keep trying. But I don't think there is any one set aftercare plan or strategy to help somebody to move forward. And like, the sad reality of it sometimes that people just don't.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't want to do anything afterwards. They just want to go to treatment and be done with it. And it's sad when that happens, because it usually leads to them having to start the cycle over again. But to me, the best plan possible is one that's completely individualized to a person, that speaks to the individual needs, the individual motivations, to that specific family system, and fits like a glove right into their life.
So for you personally, did you find that, recovery groups were necessary, especially in the beginning? Is that something that you strongly suggest to people in early recovery?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think that for me, like, I look at my recovery groups and the support groups that I go to as my family.
Yeah.
And I was cautious walking into them at first, didn't know where I belonged in there, and didn't realize that I belonged in there at first. But after a while of consistently going to the same meetings and seeing the same people, it became my family, and a place where, at least for an hour each day or each week, whenever I was going, it became a spot where I felt I could be my 100% authentic self, let all walls down, let my guard down, and just be who I was, and didn't have to deal with the pressures of the world. I can just be around people who understand me, love me, like me. And the steps and all the other stuff that comes along with it are amazing. They're just one part of it. It's the we part of the programs that I think is the most beneficial for me. I needed that group of people who just understood me no matter what.
Oh, 100%. It's, we talk about it a lot. It's that community is really what makes such a huge difference in recovery, because you're not alone anymore. So many times when you're in active addiction, you feel so lonely, and, like, you're the only person that's experiencing this. And then you get into recovery and you go to these meetings and you meet people, and it's like, you might not have the same story, but you share the same emotions and feelings and experiences.
Yeah.
And for the first time, you feel like you belong. And it's not just that one meeting either. You can go somewhere else,
Anywhere.
and it's the same type of people.
Literally all over the world. Like,
And they
I've been in
wanna
meetings
help.
all over the world where I'm like, I feel at home here. This
Yeah.
feels nice. Like, I can just relax and have a cup of coffee. It's the same book. It's the same stuff we're discussing. I think what probably a lot of people relate to, though, too, is that I didn't need a community at that point. For me, like I said before, I had my friend group still from when I was young. Like, they weren't using with me. They weren't in the same situation. And I had friends for 25 years at that point, and that still loved me, but they didn't get the addiction side of it.
Yes.
And so when I walked into those rooms, I was super cautious too, of like, I'm a low key guy. I like to keep my circle small. I don't want a huge group of friends. I don't want another group of friends. And it wasn't until like I kept going and realized, like, no, I kind of like being here. I like these guys, and I feel at home here, so I'm going to keep coming back.
It feels like you can finally, like, take the mask off,
Yeah.
And you can sit down and really be who you are and feel what you're feeling, because sometimes even with family, they might understand, like we've said it, they understand to an extent, they want to support you, but, like, they really just don't get it.
No.
And they'll never get it unless they've been there.
I mean, we tell families all the time, like, you are meant to be their mom, dad, brother, sibling, spouse. You're not meant to be their recovery support.
Yeah.
You can be there for them, you can love them, but you are not their recovery support. They need to find that on their own, and they'll find it with other like-minded individuals or professionals. But you can't put yourself in that position, because you're not going to understand it. You're not going to get, when they have a craving, you're going to start spinning.
Yes.
You're going to go emotional. I think even going back to what I was saying before, I have these best friends, but I still don't think I can go to them and like cry or be emotional about certain things. Like we don't have that relationship. They would love me, but they wouldn't no idea what to say. And I can go to a meeting and cry with somebody, cry with another man, and who will hug me and say, I understand.
Right.
I get it. I've been there. Here's how to get through it.
Yeah. It's super, just like you said, the whole like a family member could start spinning. It's like their job is to be here, and then you have your recovery people to help you in this aspect, because it can be scary for them, and they can't put themselves in your shoes to really truly understand without scaring them.
For sure. Right. Like there's no way they're going to be able to not respond emotionally
Right.
to anything you say.
So what advice would you give to someone struggling with addiction that might be listening right now? You know, maybe about just starting the process. What would you say to them?
Start the process. Like that would be my advice. Like you don't have to do this on your own, which is so cliche to say, but it's true.
Yeah.
Start the process. Whatever it takes. Call an anonymous therapy line. Call your insurance company. Call somebody. And if you know you can't detox on your own, you don't have to. You don't have to do this the hard way. There's options out there. There's people out there willing to help. Do whatever it takes. Call a 12-step group. Just start. You don't have to commit to anything long term. You don't have to do anything else that we're talking about on this podcast. Just start and see where it takes you. Just take it one step at a time and see what happens. And then if you feel good after taking that first step, take the next one. You don't have to commit to anything, though. Just start.
Yeah, it's so true. Drugs are always waiting for you.
Yeah, you can always go back,
Yep.
but it can't hurt. And if you really are struggling that bad and you really want to stop, the question is what are you doing to stop? And you have to ask yourself that hard question. Am I doing anything to try to cease the behaviors that I'm participating in? And if you're not, then you have to start to take action.
Yeah. What if somebody listening to this was interested in hiring a company like Next Level Recovery Associates? How do they find you? Tell us a little bit about the process. Is it something that do you guys start off with them before treatment, during treatment, after treatment? Just give me a little rundown.
Before, during, and after. So there's really not a bad time to reach out to us. We're very collaborative. So if the loved one is already in treatment, we'll happily connect with the treatment program and talk to the clinical team to make sure that we're an appropriate fit for them. We can entertain any situation. You know, we have a pretty big team that we've built out now of different people from different backgrounds with different specialties. So usually we can put together a pretty good plan for somebody. What I would suggest is just go to the website. It's nextlevelrecoveryassociates.com or nextlevelra.com. You could fill out the contact form and one of us will call you and we'll always do a consultation with you. And if you call us and we're not the right fit, we will never leave you hanging. We will always make sure that you have options. We'll present you with a number of options that you can go to that can work for you. So we're not going to leave you hanging. If I talked about putting in the work and starting the process somewhere, if that's with us, we're more than happy to guide you and help you through it.
Do you want to add anything else?
I mean, just in terms of like the positive results and rewards of recovery, like I would love to add, like I don't think people realize what you're capable of. And I think if you put in the work, the gifts that keep coming back to you and the times you'll surprise yourself throughout the process. I never thought I would be able to get my master's and just did. I just got accepted to a doctorate program. I'm going to be a psychologist in a few years. Like,
wow.
I never thought any of this stuff would be possible because I was in such a bad place. But over the years and putting in the time and the effort, I get to live my dream. Yeah. Like, truthfully, I get to live my dream. There's hard days and it sucks at times, of course, but if you put in the time and effort, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thanks for
Blake.
having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
It's awesome.
Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember that growth and recovery are possible, and it can all start today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Banyan Treatment Centers, and make sure you're subscribing for notifications of new episodes. And please don't forget to leave us a review. If you or someone you know are struggling, call us today at 888-515-7706. Thanks for joining us today on the Banyan Podcast.